Right, welcome to this Tactica video for Leviathan Tyranids, and a bit of a different style here. We're going to be looking at actual deployment and using the models on the battlefield. So we've got an example of a table here with plenty of terrain for the Tyranids to lurk and hide behind. So I want to go for like a theoretical deployment, talk about some moves and some strategies during the game as well. So this is the 2000 points Leviathan Tyranids list that we'll be using here in this video. I've done a full army breakdown. The complete army video should be live for these as well, so you can check out all the details, discuss a lot of tactics, go through points, values, war gear, detachments. All of that is covered in detail in that video. Obviously you can see this army in action in our battle reports, on membership and on the YouTube channel. But what we'll do here is we're going to do a theoretical deployment, so we're going to start putting models onto the board or not. Some of them are going to go into reserve, and we'll talk about each of the options here in this video. For discount 40k, thinking of collecting Tyranids or getting into collecting them, or for your regular hobby supplies, it's gamingfigures.com. Link for them in the video description below. And if you want bonus content, help support the channel, get onto our Discord community, or even go into the higher tiers with WhatsApp and so on, then it is YouTube channel membership, or you can support us on Patreon, and links for that are in the video description below. But big thanks to everyone that supports us. It means we can keep the content coming. Right, so I've gone ahead and fully deployed the army, including reserves. So it's a very handy video, I think, to show you the placement of units on the board, anticipating what you're going to do throughout the game. So I'm not going to go through every deployment zone. I've done an example here. It's Dawn of War, so you're deploying 12 inches in. This is a 60 by 44 inch board. Deploying 12 inches in. I've marked the line of dice, or marked the deployment zone with this line of orange dice for you, just to give you a reference. Some units are deploying right up to the edge of that, others are holding back. And others with this list are beyond that because they're infiltrating into no man's land. The opponent's army, however it deploys, is across the other side. I've also marked the objectives. That's quite crucial here in this video. So my home objective is just here. Then the opponent's objective is just up on the wall over there. And then we have three no man's land objectives. One dead center, it's just on top of that platform. One here next to this warp portal. And then one across here as well, in the open on this left hand side. I'm going to mention the terrain. So the terrain is from gamemat.eu. So the battle mat is Sands of Time. It's from them. It's 60 by 44 inches in size. It's a brilliant desert mat that you can use. And then using a combination of their industrial terrain sets. That's the pre-painted industrial terrain set, which I've made some adjustments on just to get it into a rusty sort of desert theme. They get 4 of these containers in that set. You get that large structure across there. You get a set of those barrels which I've stacked on top of each other. There's another one of the large containers. You get 4 of these, which for this video I've joined them all together just to make one large terrain piece on this left hand side. And then I've combined the terrain set with some industrial terrain from Games Workshop for Necromunda, and then just rusted it up using the dirty down rust effects, which just come out really well. Spray it silver, then just put the effects straight on. I've done a full tutorial on how to do that, how to upgrade, color correct the gamemat.eu terrain, and to use the dirty down rust effects as well. So that's easily done, and it gives you a real nice desert board. Also using the warp portal from gamemat.eu as well. It's a great feature to have on the table, and the same kind of rusty effects being done on that. But you can check out gamemat.eu for suppliers of battle mats, pre-painted terrain sets. I'll leave links for them in the video description below. It's also a discount code for 11% off across the whole store, so that's including all the battle mats and terrain, and they are shipping worldwide. So with the terrain, we're going to play hard edge here and obscuring. So it's quite crucial to help protect some of these Tyranid units. So this whole block here is obscuring. The platform going by the hard edge of these pillars is obscuring. So there's some here, but not too much. A little bit here. This whole cluster is obscuring. This terrain piece across here is obscuring again, going by the hard edge. Just keep that in mind, just the way I've placed some of the models on the board. So this Tyranid list, we talk about it in detail in the complete army video, but its aim is to go after the no man's land objectives immediately in the game, and the idea is to try and harvest points as quickly as possible. Just set yourself up on that objective, the middle objective, and this objective, so to flood all of them if possible, and then also to anchor the home objective. And then later on in the game, maybe, if we can, go after the opponent's objective as well, but it's for the immediate grab. And so I've positioned units either on those objectives or in position to move out onto them turn 1 onwards. Now obviously you're facing off against your opponent with the same sized army. They're going to try and go after the objectives, but you're on them first, and so the opponent now is forced either to ignore you, in which case that would be foolish because you're in control of the objectives, and it sort of forces their hand. They're going to have to go after the objectives as the game goes on. But it means you're there first. You've leapt in or infiltrated in, grabbed objectives, and now it's over to the opponent. What are they going to do about it? How could they try and clear all of these objectives in one go? And so it puts the pressure on them immediately. It also gives you a depth for your deployment. Your units are right out across here, and so you've got all this depth of friendly territory. It's very unlikely the opponent's going to get in here on turn 1 with the majority of their units. You're going to have good ball control, good depth to your ball control, which is another advantage. So for individual unit deployment and why have they been deployed in that way? First up, I've got a Lictor across here, and he is in a position, he doesn't need to be on the home objective, but he's in a position on turn 1 just to move out onto the home objective. His job for this particular game is just to sit on that objective and survive. He's a good choice. He's got lone operative, so if the opponent's going to try and go after him with shooting, he's got to get within 12 inches. And remember, there's all this depth, so the opponent's unlikely to wade through here to try and get through to him. He's a low priority target, but he's a nice 60-point cheap option that I can swing around onto an objective, and then I can anchor it, I think, quite comfortably through the game. Then for my detachment, I'm running Vanguard Onslaught. If the opponent does get to within 12 inches, I can pay a CP for him and knock the lone operative ability down to 6 inches. The opponent has to get within 6, and so another layer of protection for that Lictor. So it's a great objective holding unit. So I'm just going to put a cheap one of those on the home objective. I'd rather that sit there, and it would free up the hive turret to then move out to where the action is further up the table. So you can see there's a good spread of deployment. Everything's been deployed in a certain way and for a reason. So I'll follow the other Lictors. So I've got 2 others. There's one over here on the left-hand side with its eyes on that objective. I don't want to deploy right on it because bear in mind the opponent can move out. So I'm going to hold back to try and keep a healthy distance away from the opponent, but in a position where I can move 8 inches or advance and get onto that objective if the coast is clear. So he's positioned in a way to hop straight onto it, or if there's a major threat, I know I'm going to get killed, I'll do the opposite. I can run around and hide. So I've positioned him just there. He's on a flank, so if I get secondaries that say I'd perform an action on a flank, or get into a table quarter, or get onto no man's land objective, he's in a position to do that. So a good tactical, cheap tactical option on that flank. It's also creating a nice sort of denial zone around here for any deep strikers and flankers coming on. The other Lictor, something similar with him. He's positioned here. Again, not too far up because maybe the opponent's, lining himself up to resurge forwards with some strong units. So he's obscured behind here. He's got lone operative. He could move in advance to get to the middle objective, or he could move in advance to get onto that objective across there. So I'm just setting him up as an option on this right hand side. Death Leaper, the super Lictor, in a position to move around to go after that objective, or to shift and hide behind here, whatever I need to do with him. Just another supporting, infiltrating lone operative unit. Then I have more infiltrators. I have Von Ryan's Leapers here. These can move very, very quickly. Again, I've positioned them on the flanks so they can perform actions across here for secondaries. Remember, the aim of the game for this Tyranid force is just to rake in points through control of objectives and through drawing secondaries and completing those secondaries and working my way through them as effectively as possible. So another handy unit to have on the flank, nice and cheap. I can bound them up the board nice and quick. They go 10 inches. I can advance with them so they can move nice and quickly. So having those as an option on the flank is a great idea. These 2 units, perhaps I've seen an opportunity to go for a unit that the opponent has. It's a bit isolated, and if I get turn 1 I could pounce on them. So with these 2, I position them here. They have a 10-inch move, and with these I can advance and charge, so I really can push right into the opponent's deployment zone. I could use them as a throwaway unit. I could push into the opponent's deployment zone, try and complete some kind of secondary, go for table quarters, something like that. Disrupt a unit, screen and block, just those kind of options available with those 2 units. And they're expendable enough. They're 70 points a unit. So good distraction. Not too much of a big deal if they're destroyed. So we're infiltrating in, but cautiously enough, trying to anticipate what the opponent potentially might do. Then I have the bulkier units to create a stronger position and a stronger hold on these no man's land objectives. First up is this non-emissary positioned here on the right hand side. I've pushed him right up to the edge of my deployment zone, and it's quite obvious his task, nice and straightforward. His aim is to get to that objective, sit on it, and then just rake in points throughout the battle. I've chosen this flank as opposed to the middle or to the left hand side because of the terrain. Got a nice large piece of obscuring terrain which I can maneuver around during the game. So for example, if these have moved out of the way, he goes his 10 inches and sits there during the battle. I've obscured this whole left hand side. He's now hidden and behind the obscuring terrain. The only avenue the opponent's got is down this left hand side, or his left hand side, my right, if he decides to go down here. But that's not so bad. The majority of the board is blocked off, and so that's a nice shelter position. I'll choose Feel No Pain 5+, OC of 15 with his special ability, sit on that objective, camp out on it. If he's able to hold that throughout the battle, that's going to serve me really well for primaries, great for secondaries. If the opponent does go after this objective, then I've got a decent shooting close combat monster that can stand up for itself. So that's the idea with the non-emissary. Ideal situation, it'll move straight out on turn 1 and go for that objective and to anchor it throughout the battle. The middle's a lot more exposed, so he's not, I don't want him being brought down. And this objective is more difficult for me to work around, and again it's more exposed. So I've selected this one over on this side, hopefully a quieter objective. Where there may be a bit more trouble is the centre, but I don't want to ignore it. I've got Death Leaper who can move out onto it quite quickly. Turn 1, he's probably going to move up here and sit on that objective. Again, forcing the opponent, what's the opponent going to do? Ignore it, then I'll claim the points. If they come for it, then they're going to have to try and fight for that central objective. As a backup, something sturdier and bigger to sit on top of that will be the Hive Tyrant. So he's positioned here, again, close to the edge of my deployment zone, and then he'll move, advance, and get round to in range of that central objective and fight for that. Or to not go for that one, he can make his way through this way and go after that objective on the left-hand side. He's got a decent bodyguard. He'll absorb a fair bit of damage, and again, he'll happily fight in close combat for that objective. But sheltered to a degree behind here, partially obscured, claiming a bit of terrain. Bodyguard unit, tough enough to absorb damage coming through. He's not on his own. To support him, firepower support. So terrain effect setup here. This is a good deployment, I think. If I deploy like this, he's totally sheltered. If there's a lot of, if I'm planning against Tau or something, that might be a good idea. But usually, I had to set him up so that I can anticipate he's going to get shot at, but I can cope with that all right, usually. Setting up here means that I've got a good field of fire. I'm looking down in this direction, covering the central objective. It will help cover him as he moves in. It means that I may not need to move to get into a good firing position because I've got a good field of fire. And if I don't move, it's a heavy weapon. I'll get +1 to hit roll. I can hit on 2, so it's going to help with his firepower. I'm tucked into the terrain, so if I do want to tuck in, it's not that big a deal. It's easily done. I'm gaining some cover, which will help with my armor save as well. So this is a good firing position, nice anchoring point. He's also in range to walk over to the home objective if I need to bulk it out with something tougher on that objective. So I like this position across here. I'm just looking at other parts of the table. This is a good spot for him to lurk. I'm also creating a nice denial zone across here for deep strikers coming in. So it's handy to have him in this position. He's there to be a firepower threat and a bit of a toughness on the board. So we can hold and contest and fight for the central objective. We can go for a pretty strong grab on this right hand side. And then this objective is quite open at the moment. If one Ryan's Leapers are on it, Lictor's poised and ready to move out. We say the opponent's got some strong forces. It looks like this is the objective they're going to go for. I could just concede that objective and then just concentrate on other areas. But if I want to, I can try and fight for it. And so that's deployment done. We then have a substantial amount of reserves, units in my back pocket that I can bring on at some point during the game. So 2 Screamer Killers inside their drop pods. With their rules, you can come in on turn 1. And then also we have the Tyranid Warriors who've been joined by the Prime. So with the Warriors, they'll come in on foot from regular reserve. The Prime will join them. They get an absolute heap of shredding attacks. They will, like a knife through butter, go through light infantry. They can quite comfortably hack their way through regular and heavy infantry. And even they're a threat to vehicles. With Synapse, they'll be up to strength 6. They'll be twin linked. You get 36 attacks with these, 6 with him. He gives everyone sustained of 1. I can choose to reroll 1s for my attacks with this unit as well, or with the Warriors at least. A bit of AP -2 going on, so they can shred and be a threat to practically anything on the board. So I'll keep those off table and look to bring them in on turn 2 or turn 3. Possibly turn 1 with the detachment, because there is a stratagem that lets you bring in units from reserve at a turn early. I think it's Surprise Assault it's called for a CP, so that's an option. My preference at the moment is to bring them on late, so turn 3, when you're allowed to bring them on deeper, like inside the opponent's deployment zone. Different ways to use the Warriors. I can contest and fight for their home objective if I can get around there, if the coast is clear and I'm able to do it. But I'll also be watching the flanks across here. Usually I'll turn up on a flank, and I can either bring them in on my turn and then try and go for the charge, but that comes with awful risk, because if the charge fails, the opponent then gets the initiative. Or for a CP, you can use Rapid Ingress, and that's going to let you come in at the end of your opponent's movement phase. It's a brilliant move, and you're setting yourself up so that you can move off when it's your turn, and you'll gain that move, and then hopefully a much shorter charge, and the initiative will be with you. So that's the aim of that squad, is to usually Rapid Ingress them in. So I'll be watching the battlefield, watching the opponent's movement, looking for ambush opportunities. Really good fun way to play. And then if the opportunity is there, bring them in with Rapid Ingress ambush, and on your next turn pounce on that target. And thankfully they're able to go after pretty much anything, so whatever it is you need to go after, the Tyranid Warriors usually will do well enough going after them. They're OC2, so they'd be good for fighting for something like the opponent's objective if possible. It also keeps the opponent on edge. They're constantly watching their flanks, watching their deployment zone. The other option is to, if you need to, if the opponent really is making good progress in here, or they've come on with a real bad deep striking threat somewhere, I can bring them in across my own deployment zone, battle line, if I need to, as a counterpunch unit. But in ambush, preferably Rapid Ingress, I move off, charge, and then deliver a heap of attacks against whichever target is the object of the ambush. But they are a really good asset to have, and I can react to wherever the opponent starts to heap up a threat, because I'm not sure which way it's going to go. And maybe the opponent's got deep strike and reserve units of their own, to watch those as they come in. For example, turn 2, the opponent could bring on a real good unit here on the flank, and when their move is finished, I'll then react by bringing the Warriors on as a counterpunch unit. That's the kind of idea I'm thinking of with the Warriors. So brilliant tactical asset to have in your back pocket. Screamer Killers inside their drop pods. Again, turn 1 onwards, these can arrive. And as we were saying earlier on about the opponent with a threat moving in across here, I think the opponent really wants to go after this objective. I reckon I can handle across here fine. Then I might not want to just concede that. I might try and tie it up. So I can just start dropping in with these as a reaction on my turn, or Rapid Ingress, turn 2 onwards with one of these, and then just start dropping off a heap of monstrous flesh, and all of a sudden you can just fill out an objective, and now the opponent thinks, right, the coast, this is not going to be easy, the coast is not clear, I've now got to fight my way through all of this to try and get to that objective. And if these can tie up the opponent, drain their resources, and they've got to fight hard for this, and I've got an easier life across here with these, and that's tactically a real good position to be in. And I can play games with these. I can drop the drop pod in and then deploy behind with the monsters. The opponent's got to try and get through this first and then get through to him. The charge distance is increased. And if the other things we can do, just to give you an idea, if the opponent is moving out, and I know the opponent's here, he moves out here, he's going to go for a charge, he's going to try and clear. Let's say we've got Electron here, he's going to go for the charge. I know he's going to take that objective. It's obvious and he needs to take that objective, so I know he's going to end up around there. Then I could come in and drop in at the end of his move. He's currently over there, so I can deploy further back, like so. So I'm miles away from any kind of counter charges taking place. And then when it does come around to my turn, then move up, and I'm in a position to then charge onto that objective, because I know that's where the opponent's going to end up across there on that objective. So that's the idea, is anticipate where you think the opponent's going to go, and if it's objectives, it becomes quite obvious where the opponent's intentions are. So you can do it with one. If you really want to stack things up, it's such a psychological thing. The opponent thinks, yeah, that objective's clear, I'm going to go for it, and all of a sudden these Screamer Killers turn up with their Tyrannicides. And now all of a sudden the opponent's got hard work now to try and get through to that objective. Or in fact, you know you're going to get destroyed, you already are outclassed, but you claim that part of the battlefield. The opponent can't move through because it's all blocked off by all of these creatures, and then they have to, it just delays them and stops them from getting onto the objective as quick as they hoped. So that's the kind of options you can go for. If I think the Hive Tyrant's moving out and he's outclassed, he's going to get swamped, the opponent's got other units coming in, then to back him up I'll start dropping these in as supporting units to back him up, to try and tip the odds in my favour. So you're trying to react to where the opponent's strong, where the threat is. I've got these deep striking assets that I can just bring onto the table. It bulks the army out nice and quickly for you, you can flood the table with units, and so that can put you in a position of strength. And you're sort of keeping the initiative on your side as you are trying to react to the opponent and dominate the table and control these objectives. So that's pretty much the rundown on deployment here. I think it gives a nice angle. It's good to go through lists and to run videos showing you the structure of an army, but to actually put it out on the board, to give you a chance to see it on a 60 by 44 inch table with the objectives and deployment zones laid out, chance to see the way the actual army sits on the board, then thinking about how you're going to go after objectives, how the opponent's going to react, how they're going to attack. So that's the idea of the series. If you enjoy this, want to see it for other factions and armies on the channel, then do give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment. It really does help, and hopefully we'll see some other videos featuring armies being deployed and some theoretical tactics here for the different factions on the channel. And then if you like the army, 3 painting tutorials for Hive Fleet Leviathan. For extra content and to help support the channel and get involved with the SS82 community, then do join us on channel membership and over on the Patreon page. And then for discount 40K, it's gamingfigures.com. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time.